कुमारा गजानना शंभ कुमारा गजानना शंभ कुमारा गजानना शंभ कुमारा गजानना लंबोधरा शिव श्रीसुता लंबोधरा शिव गौरी सुता हे शिवनंदन हे शिवनंदन गजानना शुभानना गजानना शुभानना लंबोधरा शिव गौरी सुता लंबोधरा शिव गौरी सुता शिव गौरी सुता गुण गाओ हरि नाम गाओ हरि गुण गाओ हरि नाम गाओ आनंद आनंद हरि नाम रे आनंद आनंद नाम रे हरि गुण गाओ हरि नाम गाओ हरि गुण गाओ हरि नाम गाओ मन में जपन करो हरि नाम रे स्मरण स्मरण कर हरि नाम रे जपन करो हरि नाम रे स्मरण स्मरण करो हरि नाम रे हरि ओम भज रे सदा हरि ओम भज रे सदा हरि गुण गाओ हरि नाम गाओ हरि गुण गाओ हरि नाम गाओ आनंद आनंद हरि नाम रे आनंद आनंद हरि नाम रे गुण गाओ हरि नाम गाओ हरि गुण गाओ हरि नाम गाओ में जपन करो हरि नाम रे स्मरण स्मरण कर हरि नाम रे मन में जपन करो हरि नाम रे स्मरण करो हरि नाम रे हरि ओम भज रे सदा हरि ओम भज रे सदा हरि गुण गाओ हरि नाम गाओ हरि गुण गाओ हरि नाम गाओ आनंद आनंद हरि नाम रे आनंद आनंद हरि नाम रे हरि गुण गाओ हरि नाम गाओ हरि गुण गाओ हरि नाम गाओ गौरी नंदन गजवदना गणेश वरदा मा पाहि गणेश वरदा मां पाहि गजमुख गजमुख गणनाथ गजमुख गजमुख गणनाथ गणेश वरदा मां पाहि गणेश वरदा मां पाहि गजानना 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 ॐ गजवदना गजानना ॐ गजवदना गौरीनन्दन गजवदना गौरीनन्दन गजवदना गणेश वरदा मां पाहि गणेश वरदा मां पाहि गजमुख गजमुख गणनाथ गजमुख गजमुख गणनाथ गणेश वरदा मां पाहि गणेश वरदा मां पाहि गजानना 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 ॐ गजवदना गजानना ॐ गजवदना एकदन्ता गजानना एकदन्ता गजानना हे रम्बा गजानना हे रम्बा गजानना एकदन्ता गजानना एकदन्ता गजानना हे रम्बा गजानना हे रम्बा गजानना जानना गजानना 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 ॐ गजवदना गजानना एकदन्ता गजानना एकदन्ता गजानना हे रम्बा गजानना हे रम्बा गजानना एकदन्ता गजानना एकदन्ता गजानना हे रम्बा गजानना हे रम्बा गजानना 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 ॐ गजवदना गजानना ॐ गजवदना गौरीनन्दन गजवदना गौरीनन्दन गजवदना गणेश वरदा मां पाहि गणेश वरदा मां पाहि गजमुख गणनाथ गजमुख गजमुख गणनाथ गणेश वरदा मां पाहि गणेश वरदा मां पाहि गजानना 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 ॐ गजवदना गजानना ॐ गजवदना गौरीनन्दन गजवदना गौरीनन्दन गजवदना गौरीनन्दन गजवदना Sahanau bhunaktu sahaviryam karavavahai tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti. Together we will chant Bhagavad Gita chapter 4 verses 1 to 10 please. Bhagavad Gita chapter 4 verses 1 to 10 chanting. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Imam Vivashvate Yogam Proktavanaham Avyayam Vivashvan Manave Praha Manurikshvakave Bravit Yevam Parampara Praptam Imam Rajarshayo Viduhu Sakale Neha Mahata Yogo Nashtah Parantapa Saye Vayam Maya Tedhya Yoga Proktah Puratanaha Bhakto Sime Sakha Cheti Rahasyam Chetaduttamam. Arjuna Uvacha Aparam Bhavato Janma Param Janma Vivashvataha Kathametadvijaniyam Tvamadau Yuktavaniti. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Bahuni me vyatitani Janmani tava charjuna Thanyaham veda sarvani Na tvam vedha parantapa Ajopi sannavyayatma Bhutanamishwaropi san Prakrutim swamadhisthaya Sambhavamyatmamayaya Yada yada hi dharmasya Glanirбhavati bharata Abhyuttanamadharmasya Tadatmanam srujamyaham Paritranaya sadhunam Vinashaya cha dushkrutam Dharma samsthapanarthaya Sambhavami yuge yuge. Janma karma cha me divyam Evam yo vetti tattvataha Tyaktva deham punarjanma Naiti mameti sorjuna Vitaraga bhaya krodhaha Manmaya mamupashritaha Bahavo jnana tapasa Uta madbhava magataha. We have been studying in the previous classes about this topic, self, the eternal teacher. In that we have covered the 6 verses and the topic runs till the 10 verses. So we will have the quick recap what we covered in the last class. The 6th verse that talks about the Prakriti, how it came from the Purusha, the Supreme Self. Though unborn, imperishable nature, the Lord of all beings, presiding over my own Prakriti, matter, I am born by my own Maya, Bhava. So the mantra, the verse explains the pure consciousness which Krishna identifies. So the pure consciousness, the Supreme Self, the Atman, he is imperishable and unborn, means that which is birthless and deathless entity, which is the Self, the Atman. Krishna identifies with that Atman and became Atman, and from that standpoint, talking as it were, telling the state is beyond birth and death, therefore it is unborn, imperishable nature. It has no confinement, no individuality, it is the totality. So, to understand, we covered that great example that the sun is always one, but the reflecting images are plenty because of the reflecting medium. So you got to understand this metaphor to grasp this concept of how this entire plurality, the diversity of the living beings, the whole creation came about is nothing but just an imaginary projection, like a reflected suns through the reflecting media of the mirrors. The blue mirror, when the sun rays falls, you get the blue sun, the individual sun, the local sun. Through the red mirror, there is a red sun. Through the broken mirror, there is a broken sun. So for every little water drop or dew drop, when the sunlight falls, the all pervading sunlight, there is a reflected image, the local sun, the limited sun, the particular individual illusory projection has been created. So wherever there is a reflecting surface, there is a reflected sun. Similarly, wherever this pure consciousness contacts the Prakriti, the matter, you get this individuality, which is the whole living beings, the whole creation. So this is what the entire concept here. The death is for the individual beings, not for the pure consciousness. The death and birth is not for the all pervading sun, is permanent. The reflected image, reflected sun goes through this birth and death because of the reflecting medium. As long as reflecting medium exists, there is a reflected sun you see through. It created. The moment reflected medium ceases to exist, there is reflected sun disappears. That is called the birth and death. So this existence and non-existence is purely based on the reflected medium, not the all-pervading sun. So, but the sun above remains unaffected by the existence and non-existence of its own reflections. The sun exists forever. It never be born and it will never die. Therefore, it is known as unborn. Unborn means it will never be born. The moment anything is born, it's susceptible to death. It is inevitable law. Therefore, this pure consciousness, Brahman, is existing forever. It has no birth and death, it is imperishable. The identification of this pure consciousness with matter, with Prakriti, with the equipments, the body, mind, intellect, the individuality is born, the individual beings, and gives rise to this total plurality, the diversity. So just as the all-pervading sun rays contacting the reflecting medium gives rise to reflected sun, the pure consciousness is the source, the ultimate primeval source of all beings, because without the sun there can never be a reflected image. The sun is the source, and the reflecting medium is the way, the means through which the reflected sun arises. So the pure consciousness is the primeval source of all beings. We are all the heterogeneous variety of beings because of the pure consciousness pulsating through these equipments. So hence the verse termed as the Lord of all beings, Ishaha, the Lord of all beings. So the Prakriti is the matter. So the spirit is the Atman, refers to as my own. So that is the ownership which it takes, the spirit takes, the Atman takes, that Prakriti, matter is my own, it claims. So matter and spirit remain one, impossible to separate. So the terrestrial world never exists apart from the transcendental reality. So here is the concept of the matter that really exists. It is like snake. Snake is never existed. It is only a rope, and rope alone exists. Snake is an imaginary projection. So there exists only one. So here is that idea has been given that terrestrial world never exists apart from the transcendental reality, the Brahman, the Supreme God. It cannot, because the Supreme Reality, all pervading, alone exists, nothing else exists other than Brahman. Therefore, what is this world? The world itself is Brahman and Brahman alone. Then what is the difference? It is nothing but the new permutation, combination, new configuration, new dimension, new angle of vision. That's all happened. It is like waves are nothing but the ocean and ocean alone. It's the nama rupa, name and form. This is called Maya. Similarly, the ornaments, gold ornaments, are nothing but the gold and gold alone. The metal gold and the ornaments gold, both are same. So this is called Maya, the result of new formation, new name, new form, new combination, new position of the same material. Chemistry tells you that the charcoal and diamond both are of the same fundamental element of carbon. The carbon atoms rearranged, it becomes diamond and charcoal, depending upon the name and form. So it is already known this. It means seem amazing, but it is a scientific truth. Charcoal is carbon, and the diamond is also made up of carbon. Yet charcoal black is black and diamond is brilliant. So charcoal is soft, that leaves a mark on the paper. Diamonds are so hard and they cut through iron. Charcoal is cheap, diamond is precious. With all these differences, the same carbon atoms constitute both charcoal and carbon. Essentially, the content is carbon and carbon atoms, but their difference lies in the structure of atoms, carbon atoms, a different name, a different form, has been produced. A different combination alone creates this wide disparity in their properties, qualities, attributes, nothing else. All these variety, properties, qualities, attributes are brought about by the permutation and combination of the fundamental elements. But what is essentially is Brahman and Brahman alone. That is what. Then what is this entire thing is? It's a mere illusion, imaginary projection. So Vedanta says the difference between Brahman and this world is the difference between diamond and charcoal. This world consists of nothing but divinity and divinity only. Brahman and Brahman alone. And yet they seem diametrically opposed. The Brahman is eternal, all pervading, and all pure consciousness. This world consists of divinity, yet they are diametrically opposed in nature. So Brahman is infinite, all pervading, and changeless, eternal, is the same as the world, which is finite and limited, ephemeral, ever changing world. All the differences you perceive appear due to only name and form. The moment you remove the name and form, what lies is the supreme reality, Brahman, Brahman alone. So due to the position and configuration, you see a different imaginary projection and illusion due to permutation and combination, due to Maya, due to illusion. Get off this illusion. You break through this illusion to pierce through and get to the truth, the reality, that infinite pure consciousness is the purpose and dignity of the human birth, to investigate and realize the self. Of this Maya, remove this Maya. Maya means an illusion born out of ignorance of the Supreme Self. The moment you gain the knowledge of Vedanta, this illusion disappears and you realize the Supreme Self that you are. There is only divinity, and divinity alone exists. God alone exists, nothing else. You realize that and you reach the ultimate state of enlightenment, is the essence we covered in the previous class. Now we get on to the verse number 7. Yada yada hi dharmasya ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानमधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम्. यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानमधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम्. O Bharata, O Arjuna, whenever there is indeed a decline of dharma, dharma literally means righteousness. Whenever there is a decline indeed of dharma, righteousness, and rise of adharma, unrighteousness, then I manifest myself. It's very interesting how Lord Krishna refers to as pure consciousness, which is here as single pronoun I, myself. So Krishna addresses here Arjuna Bharata by the name Bharata. So Bharataha. Bharata is simply means Bhasi Rataha. Who is Bha means light. Light means knowledge, consciousness, the wisdom, the self-knowledge. Rataha means reveling, bathing, immersed in light. So the Bharatas means people in those days, they called Bharatas in this land because always they are imbued, immersed in Vedantic knowledge of pure consciousness, enjoying the complete divinity and divinity alone, fully enlightened people. That's why we call them Bharatvasis. So Bharata means reveling in light. India has always been reputed all over the world as a spiritual country because everyone has a spiritual knowledge and realization in those days. That's why we call it Satya Yoga, means people always in the truth, in the reality, in God consciousness. That was the India, Bharat, spiritual country where people reveled, means immersed in divine light. They never had any other thought except divinity, and divinity alone is the greatness of being born in India was those days. Krishna apparently draws the attention of Arjuna to his role in maintaining the spiritual status of Bharata, the Bharat, India. So the ancestors, the forefathers, that's why it is Rishi culture. Even today, the people talk about what is your origin. They call it surname, which is Gotra, that family name, that everything. If you go trace back deeper, then you will get some sage or saint is your descendants, your ancestors. That is the origin. That means those who already merged with the self enlightened people is the Indian spiritual status represents. So India has been blessed with periodic visitations. In the history, if you analyze the periodic visitations of the great sages and saints in the past, and from time immemorial, they have been coming all the way to visit to this country time and again, and they appeared only to have one purpose, one mission, one goal. What is that? They appeared in this country whenever there is a dharma, righteousness is declined, reduced in the society, in the world, and adharma, unrighteousness, increased. Then there used to be an appointment is given to the sages and saints. They used to appear in the scene, and they used to come to indicate that Krishna declares in first person singular, I manifest myself through these sages and saints. They used to appear. So he means the self-realized sages and saints used to appear in the scene and bring about righteousness and resurrect the righteousness and put back the country in proper track and destroy the unrighteousness elements. This was the culture and tradition and been going on from time immemorial. This is what I manifest myself again and again means the supreme self, the Atman. Through these great sages and saints, the enlightened masters, they appear and raise the bar of this righteousness in the society and reduce the unrighteousness is the great sages and saints used to make this wonderful place to live on in the righteous life. The world always is a mixture. There is no such thing called righteous world. There is no such thing called unrighteous world. The world is a mixture. World is an admixture of right and wrong, good and evil. All the things, pairs of opposites define the world. There can never be good world, there can never be bad world. The good and evil is a mixture proportion of this world. Good cannot be existing alone, and bad also cannot exist alone. So dharma, righteousness, goodness, godliness, and morality and virtue, these are all the synonyms of dharma. Adharma means blasphemy, immorality, barbarity, unrighteousness, vicious, negative, bad elements. That is called adharma. So, dharma alone cannot exist in this world, and adharma alone cannot exist in this world. There always been a admixture. There always been a mixture. That is the world. So, you got to understand, just as there can never be a business which is only profits, there can never be a business which is only losses. Business means profit and loss. It is an admixture. There can never be one alone. One cannot exist without the other. This is the world. So, as long as this world exists, everything is made up of pairs of opposites. So, the dharma cannot maintain itself for long without the inspiration and guidance of self-realized sages and saints. The adharma cannot last long. The more adharma continued, there will be sages and saints appear in the scene and bring back dharma again. Through their inspiration and guidance, they bring back dharma wherever there is adharma, unrighteousness. They resurrect, they reconstitute, they reconstruct dharma, righteousness, wherever adharma prevailed. That is the caliber and guidance and inspiration of sages and saints who appear in the time immemorial, which is what the Lord Krishna telling, I manifest myself, because the self through these sages and saints bring back this righteousness is the idea. The sense objects and the emotions, sense objects of the world drag the mankind. The sensuality and materiality, barbarity, atrocities, it is a naturally bring mankind down to materialism and sensualism. That is the nature of this degradation of this world. It is a natural gravitational law. Just as the water always finds its level by flowing towards downstream, similarly, all the world is naturally gravitated. All the people of the world are naturally drawn, gravitated to sense objects and drag the mankind, the whole humanity, drawn towards the materialism. Commercial, everybody complains now. You see the Kali Yuga, they blame the world of Kali Yuga everywhere. The people are drawn towards materiality, corruption, money mindedness, commercial. They talk about all this value of the exaggerated given to the value of the currency, money, amount, at the cost of human identity, human values, human dignity, human prestige. They don't consider at all. They measure the people based on the bank balance. This is the materialism took over this world, and the sensualism. All are drawn towards sensual pasture lands, which is nothing but the sights, sounds, smell, taste, and tongue. The physical enjoyments is given the undue proportion and people are drawn towards that, and people indulge in the material world and lose the sight, lose the divinity, lose the higher values of life because of the sensual indulgence. The material world themselves, their senses, they rarely entertain the idea, entertain the thoughts of divinity. Nobody is interested in divinity or God or something higher, unselfish cause, or serve the larger group, or thinking about the nobler, subtler cause beyond their personal ego and egocentric desires, because of the lack of capacity to understand the power of senses, and materiality and sensuality is too high, which is unrighteousness here. Consequently, they fall. All the people fall into immorality and barbarity because of the too much attraction towards sensuality and materiality. They get into immorality. You always complain about there is no moral values today, there is no morality, there is no ethics, everybody is core selfish. There is a common complaint in the society today because of their adharmic nature took over, because of the attraction towards sensuality and materiality. Consequently, they fall into barbarity. This decline continues for generations after generations until the people come to a point where they weary, they stressed out, they burnt out, they worn and torn and tossed and buffeted by these vicissitudes of the nature, stress and strain, blood pressure, blood sugar, worries and anxiety increases because of the result of the attachment to sensuality, materiality. They no longer be with this senses and mind, that material and sensual lives. They become desperate. There is a demand created, there is a desperate and look for an alternative. They search for an alternative because they got fed up. Anything sensuality, anything materiality cannot last long. You get fed up, you get tired, you get bogged down, tormented with stress and anxiety, because it is not going to last long, because you are looking for an happiness, peace, enjoyment which is permanent in nature, and the sensuality and materiality cannot provide, because they do not have the eternal happiness which you are looking for. Therefore, they get desperate and they search for the alternative. The people who caught up in the barbarity and materiality look for an alternative for their unrighteous living and suffering. This creates a conducive atmosphere, a conducive environment. Conducive means a positive intention or desire to get out of this sensuality and materiality, which draws the enlightened souls towards the people. When the people suffer and long for the higher values, the enlightened sages and saints appear in the scene. They took birth, they come into the scene. Great sages appear on the scene to promote the righteousness, and then the people start feeling happiness. Sorry, but the senses, in the course of time, people re-establish righteousness gradually. They re-establish the righteousness. Is the process of this whole world mechanism, goes on from time immemorial. So, but the senses again, after some time, when the enlightened souls brought back the righteousness, people bring come to that level of righteousness. After some time, the righteousness continued for some time. Again, the people's senses and mind draws to the materiality and sensuality, and they get victimized by the pressure of the sense objects and decline the righteousness again towards unrighteousness, and unrighteousness prevail once again. This cycle of righteousness and unrighteousness, unrighteousness to righteousness goes on, repeats itself over and over again. This is what the mantra was talking about. Oh Bharata, oh Arjuna, whenever there is a decline of righteousness and unrighteousness increases, I manifest myself, I appear myself. And this is what the great message given by Lord Krishna. This you can observe when the people are suffering, there will be a person appears and brings back the peace and harmony in the society. Again, people deteriorate, again, there will be teacher supplied, and then they bring back to the some morality, some ethics, some good things, and again deterioration. This is going on from time immemorial. That is the maximum minimum range of this righteousness unrighteousness, which is the world is manufactured, world is made up of good and bad, righteousness unrighteousness. There is a range. Beyond a point, unrighteousness cannot exist, further it will collapse, and beyond a point, righteousness cannot exist, it will collapse. Those who best utilize this opportunity and understand the ultimate purpose and goal of life, they start growing spiritually by taking the knowledge and understanding of the scriptures towards the enlightenment. They transcend this unrighteousness to righteousness, from righteousness to self-realization. Such people become enlightened and reach liberation. That is the purpose and dignity of this human birth is explained by Lord Krishna. In this verse, he is talking about this play of this Maya. Krishna here merely states the law of nature, the law of maintaining the righteousness, unrighteousness law which sustains this world, so that humanity may make use of every opportunity. The birth of a human being is a great boon, great opportunity, great blessing, great time, great faculties, great capacity. Everything is provided only to realize the essence of who you are, the Supreme Self, the Atman, the God you are, Tattvamasi. You have to realize that in this through reducing your tendencies of adharma, unrighteousness, and increasing the righteousness, dharma, and gradually reach the enlightenment. You got to evolve, you got to rise above this mundane existence and reach the supreme self of immortality is the ultimate dharma of every human being, is Krishna's advice in this verse 7. So this is a great message by Lord Krishna to understand, because people gets confused all the time. Why this immorality? Why this barbarity? Even though you are born as a human being, why are you not able to evolve towards happiness rather than devolving towards suffering and sorrow and misery? Because of the attractions of the sense objects and materialism took over this country, took over the whole mankind because of the pressures of the senses. So, the moment you start following the righteousness, higher values, nobler values, subtler values, fix the goal higher as possible and consistent effort, you bring back the righteousness within yourself, you bring back happiness, peace, and you radiate peace and happiness around. That's why the Krishna says, I manifest myself, because the suffering of the people creates a good conducive environment to call for the intense desire, to call for the enlightened sages to bring back certain level of morality and ethics and happiness and peace in the society and righteousness. That is resurrection. That is bring back the track of the entire humanity to dharma from adharma, unrighteousness. And again, the moment the master leaves, the enlightened soul leaves, the intellect goes, the mind naturally deteriorates again towards the attachments, towards the objects, towards senses and sensuality to power. Again, the dharma declines, adharma starts increasing. This is happening the time immemorial in this world. So this is what Lord Krishna just states, merely states the law of nature, so that humanity may make use of every opportunity. Cost of lost opportunities are very high. The moment you lose the opportunity, being born as a human being, you may not be sure you cannot get again, and you have no choice in any other birth except in human birth to go, to grow, to evolve to the higher states of enlightenment, or to degrade yourself to the lower states. The choice is for human being alone. None other creature enjoys. So what is the blessing or greatness now is you are still a human being, and you have the great opportunity to make best use of this choice, to break this chain of birth and death, to increase the righteousness and transcend the birth and death cycle and reach the immortality. Is the rarest and greatest opportunity here and now. You've got to utilize this. If not, the next birth could be, it could be any other living being, then you lose the greatest, rarest opportunity, because all other creatures, all other living beings except a human has been given the freedom of choice. All other living beings live a beaten path, a computerized lifestyle. They don't have a freedom of choice of action. The tiger cannot choose to be vegetarian. It is fixed. Its life is fixed. It cannot change its habits. A cow cannot be a meat eater. A cow cannot change its food habits, eating habits. All the living beings except human are pre-programmed, predetermined. They have no capacity because they are denied the very source of thinking, which is the equipment, is denied to question, to think, to choose the course of their actions towards evolutionary or devolutionary. Therefore, other living beings, they don't have this evolution or devolution. They just live a mechanical existence and die and exhaust their vasanas. They don't have the problem of evolution or devolution. Whereas the human birth has this choice. You can evolve to the highest state of enlightenment through the sattvic qualities of positive lifestyle, adopting, putting effort, or you degrade yourself by sensuality, materiality, following attachments and pressures of the senses, and downgrade yourself and live a miserable life. The choice is given to human being alone. Therefore, Krishna here says, states the nature, law of nature, so that humanity may make use of every opportunity, every minute, every microsecond. You got to realize, why are you here, what are you doing all the time. You got to be acutely aware of your purpose of your existence and move towards the higher levels of evolution, towards the supreme self. If not, you squandered away, you frittered away the rarest opportunity of life, and you suffer the sorrows thereof, and it is too late. That's what the great the pond, the poem pond says. The chick did not listen to the mother's advice, and it simply misunderstood the wings and the feet, and when it observed wrongly, it did not listen to the wise counsel of the mother, and it concluded wrongly, and it jumped into the pond and drowned and dead. It says, my feet, my wings, and my feathers, for all that I see, as good as the ducks are for swimming. My beak is pointed, their beaks are round. Is that any reason that I should be drowned? Why should I not swim? Then, as well as a duck, I think I shall venture and even try my luck, said she. So, the chick is determined because of the desires of the water. I am really remarkably fond of the water. The entire humanity is remarkably attracted towards senses and sensuality and materiality, and losing themselves to this degradation and death, and it's going on from time immemorial. And alas, alas, says the Upanishads, they are not able to enjoy the higher levels of bliss, peace, and happiness, and immortality has been thrown away like a chick in the pond. It says that the chick jumps into the water. Why should I not swim? Then, as well as a duck, I think I shall venture and even try my luck, said she. In spite of all that her mother had told her, she must not go near. She foolishly thought there was nothing to fear. So, in this poor ignorant animal flew, but soon found her dear mother's cautions were true. She splashed and she dashed and she turned herself round and round and heartily wished safe on the ground. But it was too late to begin to repent. The harder she struggled, the deeper she went. And when every effort had vainly been tried, she slowly sunk down to the bottom and died. That is the fate of every human being who is caught up in the materiality and sensuality. Drown and death is your ultimate goal. You don't realize. It is the dead end for you. There is no happiness. There is no iota of peace and bliss through this sensuality and materiality of lifestyle you are leading, is the advice given by the Krishna. So the ducks which are observing the fate of the chick, by their grave gestures and looks, it was apparent they discoursed on the sin of not minding their parent. Means scripture, the shastras, the gurus, the Krishna's advice is not taken and followed. The fate of the chick is your tragic end in this world, is the advice, is the status of the human being. It's been going on. The ancestors, the past have faced the same plight, and you are going to the same beaten path and going to follow the same tragic end, is the advice if you don't wake up. So it was the grave justice. The ducks passed. The passing ducks saw the fate of the chick, and they discussed on the sin, means and madness of mankind. Sin, not minding the parents. So, not minding means not listening to the wise counsel of these great masters. So, it's a great poem in the pond which defines the nature of the people today without using their faculties in right direction. They are going down in the drain. So it is a great poem for our reconstitute our path towards evolutionary rather than devolutionary, is the advice given by the great poet who is called Jane Taylor. The Jane Taylor is the poet who gives this clarity how to function in this world through wise counsel of the masters. So there was a round pond and a pretty pond too. and about it the white daisies and violets grew, and dark weeping willows that stood to the ground dipped in their long branches and shaded it round. A party of ducks to this pond would repair to feast on the green water weeds that grew there. Indeed, the assembly would frequently meet to discuss their affairs in this pleasant retreat. So there is a ducks which are playing with the ducklings in the pond. A party, the group of ducks are playing about. Now they are enjoying the scene is the subjects on which they were want to converse. I'm sorry, I cannot include in verse. For though I have oft listened in hopes of discerning, I want is a matter that baffles my learning. So they are enjoying their partying, the ducks and the water in the land, they are enjoying. But one day, a young chicken, there is a young chicken with a hen, lived thereabout, stood watching to see the ducks pass in and out of the water. So sometimes they are playing on the land, sometimes going in the water. The chick got observing and wanted to be familiar with the ducklings. Stood watching to see the ducks pass in and out. Now standing tail upward, now diving below. She thought of all things she should like to do so. The chick wanted to copy whatever the ducklings are doing, and she shows the desire. So the poor silly chick was determined to try. That's what everybody running after: the money, name, fame, power, position, status, family. They are chasing this worldly hollow, and then they are disillusioned, and then they are meeting with the tragic ends. And you see, this is what the silly chick was determined to try. She thought of all things she should like to do. So it was as easy to swim as to fly. If I hang on to this materiality and sensuality, I can manage my life, is the concept of everybody's ignorance. This is what the chick is also. Though her mother had told her she must not go near, she foolishly thought there was nothing to fear. Though the scriptures, the gurus, the shastras are continuously explaining there is a problem with this worldly entanglement and suffering is the result, the people do not, she foolishly thought there was nothing to fear. So nobody is interested in Bhagavad Gita or Vedantic study because they are happy with the worldly lifestyle of quicksand. The slowly, like how the lion is caught in the quicksand, slowly sinking and dying. Similarly, these people also run after this world and sink into the quicksand of the world and losing the sight of immortality and get into this suffering and sorrow and birth and death is that he is talking about. My feet, wings, and feathers, for all that I see, as good as the ducks are for swimming. As the ducks, I am also equal, I can also swim. Though my beak is pointed, their beaks are round. Is that any reason that I should be drowned? Why not I can go for a money, job? Why can't I can enjoy the arrogance of youth? The Bhagavad great Adi Shankaracharya time and again explained, Ma kuru dhana jana yavvana garvam. The proudness, the pride feeling of youth and name and fame and power will not last long. They drown you to death, man. So be careful, says the Adi Shankaracharya. Ma kuru, don't attach yourself. Name and fame and reputation and all the worldly attractions. Ma kuru dhana jana yavvana garvam harati nimeshat khala sarvam. In the time, everything loots away. By question of time, the moment old age comes, everything goes, you become incapacitated. It's just a question of time. Come on, get on to the reality, get on to the Ma kuru dhana jana yavvana garvam harati nimeshat khala sarvam. Mayamidam buddha Brahma padam pravisha viditva. Realize that this is an imagination and illusion and get on to the Brahma padam, get on to the knowledge of Supreme. and gain the enlightenment in this very lifetime. The same idea given, but the realization of the chick is not there today. The realization of the common man, they don't have the interest and understanding of the value. So like a chick, why should I not swim? Then as good as the ducks are for swimming, I think I shall venture and even try my luck. For said she, spite of all that her mother had taught her, she must not go near. I am really remarkably fond of the water. Everybody's intense desire to chase these worldly things, and their desire is irresistible and uncontrollable. They are caught up, and suffering is inevitable. So, therefore, the poor silly chick was determined to try, and so animal flew, but soon found her dear mother's cautions were true. The moment the chick entered into the water, it found that it is too deep, and it is started realizing the danger. By that time it is too late. She splashed and she dashed and she turned herself round and round and heartily wished her safe on the ground. But now it was too late to begin to repent. Once you are caught up, it is impossible to come out. So the very chance is to gain the knowledge as quickly as possible. The harder she struggled, the deeper she went. Once you entered into the world, it is impossible to come out. And when every effort had vainly been tried, she slowly sunk down to the bottom and died. The ducks, I perceived, began loudly to quack when their poor, foul, floating dead on its back, and by their grave gestures and looks, it was apparent they discoursed on the sin of not minding the parents. Jane Taylor. So you got to wake up from this slumber of worldly attachment, entanglement, and get to the enlightenment using this great opportunity called human birth. It is the rarest opportunity given, the advice given by Lord Krishna. We will continue with the mantra verse 8 in the next class. Thank you very much. Hari Om.